move into a quick proclamation signing and then do Q&A. This is a hybrid stream, so we also have virtual questions. Roxy is going to be answering those questions from folks on the stream, so we're alternating between in-person and remote. Thanks for your patience, and we'll kick it off for the camera.
Where'd you gonna tilt?
I know, I can't see what's happening there. Sorry.
No, I'm trying to.
Thank
there
you
go.
for helping.
You're welcome. Oh, because you know they tape theirs.
Oh,
We have tape for you.
Look at that.
Really
so
That is
Yeah.
fancy. You know, you give me a piece, I'll help you on this side. We're full service here. It's not a problem. You're welcome. Got everybody? All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us here at the Oregon Department of Forestry's Fire Cache to talk about the 2025 wildfire season. First, I'm going to start off with some gratitude and some thanks for the folks who really do the work here in Oregon and the folks who are with me here today. We have a lot of agency leadership who briefed me and who are here if you have some questions. We have the State Fire Marshal, Ruiz Temple. We have State Forester Skinner, Directors McMahon, Moser, Felden, and our Adjutant General Grunwald is here. And for all of the agencies across the state, I want to thank them for their leadership and coordination to ensure Oregon's preparedness for the coming wildfire season. We keep Oregonians safe because they work very, very hard, so I want to thank them. The location for today's press conference is symbolic and it is also intentional. Thousands of wildland firefighters respond to massive fires every season, and they are recognized wherever they deploy. Today I'm visiting the largest of the many fire caches in our state, which are less visible but equally important for the firefight. As you might not know, a fire cache is a place like this. It's a location, it's a warehouse, it's a supply for all the fire tools and equipment that are for exclusive use in fire suppression. And this one is a 24-hour fire cache during the season. These fire caches provide our first responders with the critical resources they need beyond the first 24 hours of being deployed, including additional hoses, pumps, and fire tools, along with the necessary supporting infrastructure such as mobile kitchens, communication units, showers, and generators to power the fire camps when thousands of firefighters are deployed to large wildfires across the state. On my tour, I learned that our fire camps start off with 1,200, 1,500 firefighters. These are not small places, and you need to have them set up in a very short time. So I got my tour this morning here at the Oregon Department of Forestry's Fire Cache, and super impressed by the organization and the supplies that are here and the professionalism and the history of these caches and what they have meant to keeping Oregon safe. The professionalism, the dedication, it is truly impressive, and our state employees do a great job every day. This is all year round, getting ready to be ready for fire season. What happens here year round is the rehabilitation of equipment and mobile equipment in-house, cleaning fire hoses, getting everything ready for season. They're restocking the fire tools and readying the supplies necessary to support Oregon's incident management teams who respond to our most complex fires. So we send out our incident command teams, our management teams, and they are supplied by places like this. I also want to emphasize the teamwork that goes into being ready and being responsive during fire season. We have a strong relationship with the Department of Corrections and the adults in custody there. For example, there was an AIC crew just out of the South Fork Fire Cache doing the refurbishing, the organizing of the fire supplies, looking at all that equipment so it is ready. And we also know that our AICs will come out and help in certain disaster situations. This is an all hands on deck, and I want to say thank you to the Department of Corrections for their partnership. So these fire caches, like the one here, operate day and night, whenever and wherever needed, ensuring the logistics behind the on-the-ground wildfire response. It looks seamless, but there is a lot of work in the background. At our peak fire days in 2024, these fire caches supported over 10,000 firefighters deployed in Oregon. So we all know that every year we are grappling with hotter, drier conditions. Last summer's devastating wildfire season called for sacrifice, courage, and cooperation for everyone involved. The 2024 fires resulted in 17 conflagrations, nearly 2 million acres burned, and over 500 critical fire personnel were deployed from other states and other countries to assist, coming as far from Canada and other places. Our rural protective fire associations in Eastern Oregon, our ranchers in Eastern Oregon lost millions of dollars worth of fencing, feed, and access to other critical resources for their livestock. And they were also on the ground doing their volunteer work. It was an all hands on deck approach to protect life, property, and frankly, what we hold dear here in Oregon. As always, we apply the lessons from previous years to make sure we are better prepared every year to deal with our response and our recovery. And that's what we're looking to do. We're prioritizing readiness, coordination, risk mitigation, and a comprehensive statewide approach. In addition to the fire cache tour that I took, I had my annual wildfire readiness briefing from the agencies that are here today, and I want to share a few thoughts from that briefing about the upcoming season. We have some subject matter experts here if you have any particular questions when we get to the Q&A. Record-setting wildfire seasons across the West are getting longer and more devastating. What we know to be an average fire season has very long passed. Oregon received a considerable amount of moisture throughout this past winter, and our state is benefiting from a strong snowpack in the high country. However, this will also result in a lot of vegetation and vegetation growth across the state that presents additional fire risk as that vegetation dries. Experts are predicting a hotter and drier summer than in years past. By July and August, we will experience above average severity that will culminate in September and October as we reach peak fire danger. In summary, we are preparing for what is likely to be even more aggressive and increasingly difficult to control wildfire season this year. And as I've stated before, this is about teamwork and partnership. It's essential that our federal partners, including the U.S. Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management, continue engaging aggressively in Oregon's wildfire readiness and response. In preparing for this year's wildfire season, state agencies are increasing the state's capacity through legislatively supported funding, such as the fire marshal's upstaffing grants, providing robust training to our responders, and working together to apply lessons learned from seasons past. Projects are underway across Oregon through Community Wildfire Risk Reduction Grant funding. OFSM and its partners have completed nearly 4,500 defensible space assessments. These assessments are critical to give home and property owners the knowledge to give them added protection against wildfire. And I want to put a finer point on that as we get into the last topic of prevention. It's May, the weather's beautiful, it's getting hot, it's going to get drier. This is the month when our homeowners and property owners need to be thinking about preparing and protecting their property as best they can for the upcoming wildfire season. Preparedness is going to help us reduce damage and cost and impact on our communities, and now is the time to do that. And what I want to say to Oregonians as well, we have a long history of doing this here. We learn every fire season how to protect our communities. This is all of us doing it together. And what I love about Oregon is I think people get that. They know they need to do their part. And so as we talk about prevention and we talk about protecting our properties and our communities, this is the time to be thinking about that. And my role as governor and the role of the state is to be an ally in doing this work and giving information to those communities. And we have a great team on the ground here in Oregon. We are blessed with, I think, the best preparedness and suppression coordination in the country. And we're going to keep it that way, but it takes all Oregonians doing it together. So that brings us to my call of action, which is this is Wildfire Prevention Awareness Month. The month of May is all about being aware and preventing wildfires. Every Oregonian has a role in preventing wildfires. As temperatures increase quickly across the state, It's going to get hotter and drier throughout the summer, making it easier for wildfires to start. Together, we can support the first responders and frontline workers by doing our part. Smokey the Bear puts it well: drown the campfire, stir the ashes, and drown it again until it's cool to the touch. Every Oregonian needs to know the fire danger level where they live, and please follow the rules and the notices when you get them when the fire danger is happening in your community. Make sure your cars and your equipment are as best functioning as they can be, so there are no sparks from your equipment, because they will start fires. And please don't let your tow chains drag while you're driving. I don't think people realize the sparks from dragging those chains can cause fire along the roadside, and that's really terrible thing. So let's do everything we can to keep Oregon's lives, land, and property safe while enjoying the beautiful outdoors this summer. So now I have the honor of welcoming up our Executive Director of Keep Oregon Green, Kristen Babbs, to join me at the podium while I sign a proclamation officially declaring May as Wildfire Awareness Month. And Kristen has done a great job reminding Oregonians what their role is, and we want to keep Oregon green. Kristen, please join me.
There you go.
Okay, and I have a pen. Okay, you can come a little closer. Okay. I don't know if you can see it. She has the most amazing green tie with all the little trees in it, so you need to get a close-up of that. It's really good. This way? Yeah. Okay. Oh, no. That's right. That's
there?
right. That's
Okay.
right.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Okay.
And with that, we're going to open it up to questions.
Take some Q&A.
This is a hybrid press conference. We're going to switch between in-person and remote. Let's start with in-person. Who's got a question for the governor? Yep.
You mentioned learning from past wildfire seasons. We know that last year was unprecedented in the acreage. What lessons specifically did you learn that you're taking into this season?
That's a great question. I'm going to leave it to the experts. How about Mariana and then Kyle?
Sure.
And
Yeah.
introduce yourselves.
Mariana Reese Temple, I serve as the Oregon State Fire Marshal. It's a really great question. Part of the DNA of fire service is to continually learn. And as you know, that was a record year for Oregon. I think a few of the takeaways that we learned is that it does take all hands and complete coordination to tackle the kinds of fires that we're seeing, specifically on the east side. Kyle might come up here in a little bit, but those rangeland fires were the first that we've seen, I think he said, in 10 years, kind of, for those types of fires. Oregon experienced 6 mega fires. As the governor said, 17 conflagrations, 1.9 million acres burned. And so having those conversations early on, having the cooperation from other states, our compacts and agreements that allow us to bring firefighters from other states in is imperative. But having the ability to call early, having the conversation about invoking conflagration acts early, and also working with the Office of Emergency Management to have that statewide declaration, those are all really, really key. But I'll just anchor into what the governor said. It takes every level of government and every person to help us keep fires small and away from communities. And it starts with preparedness. It starts with this month. And if we can do actions now to mitigate that risk, that helps your firefighters in the community and at the state level during fire season.
I'm Ashley from Lookout Eugene Springfield. What steps are officials taking to pre-position resources for people who are vulnerable in WUI areas? Springfield is almost entirely within a WUI boundary.
Yeah, and one of the agencies that we have here, and I appreciate the question, because in addition to everybody getting to a community to fight a fire, we also talk about how we serve the most vulnerable on the ground. At the Oregon Department of Human Services, we have OREM, which is the Office of Resilience and Emergency Management, which has been mapping where folks who might be using services, you know, whether they live in a long-term care facility or somewhere else, knowing where those folks are, working with local emergency managers. Shout out to our office, our Oregon Department of Emergency Management. So the conversations that are happening about where are people, what do they need, particularly if they're under an evacuation order, that is something that we have been improving upon for the last couple of years. And I think we saw that really hitting its stride last season. And the alerts the mapping of where folks are and making sure that individual communities are ready at the local level to respond. So we are working on that, and we can get you some follow-up from ORM on what the things they're doing as well.
Great, thank you. Let's hear a remote question, Roxy.
All right, I've got a question from the PCS Noroeste. I've heard from viewers they would like for the state to invest more on culturally specific efforts to prevent fires, like a defensible space campaign in Spanish. For example, what resources does Oregon have to educate minority groups in fire prevention efforts?
Well, thank you for the question. It is very important that all Oregonians have communication on what they need in an emergency to come as easily as possible to them and in their language if possible. We are doing a lot more across the state with Spanish language notices and alerts. As I was touring the fire cache, I saw materials that are also in Spanish. We certainly could expand that as well. And our alert system is focusing on that, and I don't know if emergency management would like to answer that a little more. We'll follow up with you on that. But at the end of the day, people need to sign up. We are trying to make sure the alert systems are in multiple language, at least in Spanish to begin with. Please sign up. Please sign up for those alerts. Those are the primary way of knowing if something is happening and you have to evacuate and being prepared.
Can I give you my little mic for the virtual folks? Oh, yeah. How is the state preparing for a potential short staff on the federal side of firefighting? Are we going to have to like fill in and help with firefighting on the federal side of things, on federal land?
Do you want to talk about the federal land? So here's what I received in my briefing about staffing. We are on track here in Oregon to hire up for our fire season because we do have seasonal employees, and we're doing everything we can to be prepared. As are our federal partners. They are also hiring up for what they need as well. And the consistency across the region in terms of our partnerships is solid. And we're not anticipating any reduction in the staff that are needed at this coming fire season. But I don't know if you want to say anything else, Kyle.
Certainly can. Afternoon, everybody. Again, Kyle Williams, Deputy Director of Fire Operations for the Department of Forestry. So yes, we are preparing for fire season as we would any year, anticipating that we're going to rely on those relationships, partnerships that Chief Ruiz Temple mentioned. The primary fire positions at our federal partners they're anticipating being able to hire all of those folks. What might not show up on the fire line is still yet to be determined. But we're going to be as prepared as possible and then engage other states through our compact partners, other provinces. We have access to support throughout the country that we can bring in if we do end up needing it.
You mentioned we have great partnerships with other states. Last year we were reliant on Canadian firefighters. How is our relationship with Canada currently standing, and are they willing to still send firefighters across the border with the lockdowns that we're seeing with how hard it is to cross the border?
Well, we have regional compacts across the Canadian border, the Northwest, so Oregon, Washington, across into the Canadian border, not only for fire but also for emergency management type of compacts. It is, from my standpoint, haven't heard anything different. It's business as usual. We're all going to support each other, and hopefully we don't have any kind of restrictions at the border, but I'm not aware that anything is going to be different.
Joe Ranieri of KWTV. You talk about the numbers of people. I'm just kind of curious. Obviously, they're kind of financially it was kind of tough last year. Like you said, it was unprecedented. What are your numbers right now for people who are ready? Because wildfire season technically isn't right here yet, but it's knocking on our doors. Do you have an idea of how many numbers of personnel will be ready to go, or how many have, I guess, registered or signed up, so to speak?
I'm going to ask the folks behind me to give you some hard numbers, but I will say fire season is here. We are already hearing call-outs for debris burns on private property that have gotten out of control. People need to understand the fire season has begun. And how about, let's talk numbers. So,
Go ahead, Chief.
Yeah, I would just start by saying the Oregon Fire Mutual Aid System, which really is the firefighters that are in your communities and respond when we see conflagrations invoked. They're about 11,000 strong in Oregon. That represents 305 fire agencies. They make up the Oregon Fire Mutual Aid System that the governor has the ability to mobilize around the state. In addition to that, she mentioned the seasonal upstaffing grant. That grant has been signed, and we are in the process of getting that out to your local fire agencies, and we expect to bring on another 1,500 structural fire folks, and that starts in June, and that goes all the way to the end of October. So we expect the same force. Again, what's yet to be seen is how many fires and how that will impact that workforce. And that's on the structural side. I'll have my colleague come up and talk about his.
Similar for the Department of Forestry, specific to our wildland firefighters, we're going to have a little north of 400 seasonal staff hired in time for fire season. That pairs with our permanent staff, nearly 700 folks there. And then in Oregon, we have a benefit of a robust contract firefighting industry. And so there are several contractors with their 20-person hand crews, fire engines, heavy equipment that we'll also be able to access, and they're well on their way to training and hiring as well.
Yeah, can I run to you?
Sure. And you mentioned that you're increasing staffing. Does the Oregon State plan to increase the use of correctional firefighters this year?
Do you want to talk about how they're done? Yeah.
So we train with DOC every year to make hand crews available through our South Fork partnership primarily. Anticipating doing that again this summer. They're, like I said, already doing that training up at the camp. We also have other institutions around the state that we partner with and provide that training for, and anticipating being able to access those crews this summer, in addition to all of the other firefighters I just mentioned.
Is it expanding the workforce though in that regard?
There's not a specific instance of expanding this summer that program.
Yep. So the general, and then also the National Guard is also training their usual level of training as well. So, yeah.
Given what you learned last year, maybe the surprise at how quickly and widespread the East Oregon fires were, what did you take from last year that you're bringing in this year? Has anything changed as far as the strategy going into this season?
Well, I do think we want to be consistent with the strategy of last year, which is let's get out in front as quickly as we can, declare those conflagrations if we're in settings where people are living, with the fire marshal and being able to marshal resources. The emergency declaration was helpful to kind of just simplify our ability to respond in a coordinated fashion across the state. So I think my takeaway as governor was, as our professionals are saying, let's get out front early. Let's respond as quickly as we can, keep it from getting any bigger. And because we have a great coordinated system, we were able to do that, even though we were stretched to the max last season. But that's because we got out there early, and I think it could have been a lot worse if we hadn't been as responsive.
Just as a quick follow-up, like, obviously both of your firefighters aren't in East Oregon. I know a lot of structural crews got brought out. They're more expensive. Is there just anything as far as like positioning, labor, where they are, where they're living, that you guys are thinking about?
Sure. Yeah, appreciate it. That's a really good question. And so we do have access, we call it our severity resources. So we have specific exclusive use contracted helicopters and additional resources that we will place around the state based on where the acute fire risk is. And that may change from week to week where we can position those resources. We've added a couple of fixed wing platforms this summer to help us with aerial supervision specific to that right extended geographic region challenge. But other than that, we're going to rely on our partners again. I'm sure the chief has some technical positioning stuff that they're going to be working on. But so yes, we are addressing being able to have stuff strategically placed where the need is most peak.
You mentioned mapping, helping with resources. Is the mapping you're using different than the wildfire hazard map that's on track for repeal?
Yeah, so when I speak of mapping, talking about where people might need services, and again, we're not individually identifying folks, but in general, if there are communities where there are a lot of folks, for example, who might be elderly, like knowing where they are, knowing where there might have to be some pre-positioned materials, or just knowing that they have a place to go, and then everyone is aware that there might be a higher need population. So that's the type of assessment that's happening locally, and that's different from the risk mapping of risk as it relates to property and terrain and things like that.
So the floods in Harney County were in part, they were more susceptible
those from happening next year once these wildfires possibly happen this summer?
Well, certainly our goal is to have less fire on the landscape, to have a repeat of what happened last season. This is a challenging situation, I think, not only for the state but for the country, to figure out how we get resources to rehabilitate the landscape after a major fire. These things take years. And even though there might be some new vegetation on the landscape because of, like I was saying, the increased snowmelt, those lands are going to take a long time to repair. And so right now what we're doing, particularly in Harney County, is how do we better prepare that community if they might see additional flooding in years ahead, because it will take a while for the vegetation to come back. These are long-term damages that will take time. I'm looking for a stronger partnership with the federal government to rehabilitate and help prepare the landscape differently, and particularly help it recover, so we can, stop other bad things from happening as well.
Thank you for that question. So far to this point, we have not encountered that. We've had a robust response when we've asked for folks to sign up and help again. I was concerned, not just for our contractor base, but our own internal employee staff, right? That was a very difficult fire season across many different facets of the business. And what we've seen so far is that it really galvanized those emergency responders. They have a deep need to be able to support and respond when Oregonians are in need, and that's what we're seeing so far, is everybody across the board being willing to come back and help.
I have time for about 2 more questions.
And if I can, I do want to thank the Oregon legislature for the special session in December, because I did have that concern along with our partners here. We need to show up when people have done the work and pay the bills. And we were able to do that by Christmas, which was the intent and why we had the special session. I will point out there is some legislation to make some technical adjustments, so our cash flow situation will be more fluid if we have a similar situation in the future. And I want to remind people, in my budget, I've been asking for at least $150 million to be set aside in a special fund for bad fire seasons, where we have more flexibility to pay up front while we're waiting for the federal government to reimburse us for the costs that have been incurred. So we're putting some things in place, hopefully with the legislature support this session, that would hopefully keep us from having that problem in the future.
Given I guess I'm just wondering what you would tell to maybe a next generation group of people who are considering firefighting but looking at an unpredictable federal funding for wildland firefighting. They're looking at stories of people living in their cars for months on end without much of a break, and a sort of contracting workforce that's being stretched to the brink. I guess, what would you say to people to get them to be interested in this? And if anything, what's the state doing long term to keep this workforce, if at all?
That's an awesome question. So the first thing that it starts with for me is that a firefighter is a special person, right? There are many motivations for why someone goes to work. It's a call to go help someone that brings people to our workforce generally. And so from that perspective, the federal funding and that kind of thing is probably outside of the specific thing they're thinking about. Now, long term, being able to support those folks, make sure that they can pay those bills and all that kind of stuff, that is a hyper focus for both the chief, the governor's office, all the folks up here that you're talking about. And so we are working on that long term. We're reviewing firefighter pay, we're reviewing classification stuff across the board to be able to create that sustainability. And then, as the governor mentioned, there's some efforts in the legislature to create some long-term, sustainable, foundational funding for these wildfire programs in Oregon that will be able to help us with providing those positive outcomes long term.
I would also argue, I think Oregon is the premier place in the country to work in wildland fighting. We are the best prepared. We are the most organized. We have a sophisticated infrastructure here. I'm not saying it's easy to fight fires in Oregon, but I think we create a place where people want to come and learn. And so if you want to do wildland firefighting, please come to Oregon. We want you. So.
This is a question for you. You've mentioned talking with our federal partners on making sure that we have this funding in place. Are you having any of these conversations directly with Secretary Nome, because she has come out saying that she is trying to cut certain federal grants for different resources that, especially like fires across the country. What have those conversations been like with Secretary Nome, and is there any chance that we would miss out on any FEMA funding under this current administration?
I have not had any conversations with the Homeland Security Secretary. There is obviously two conversations happening at the federal level, both on FEMA, and there's a new advisory council on FEMA and how FEMA should be managed, as well as we anticipate some kind of executive order around creating a new wildfire fighting agency at the federal level. I think what we need to do, and Oregon is well positioned to do this, is to make an argument about what we know works and why it should be funded. That includes the mitigation grants to help us reduce fuel on the landscape. We have had great success with those. We need the federal government to continue to do those. We need to continue to have the partnership with our federal agencies that we have modeled here in Oregon to continue to do that. That does take resources. It's not just about rearranging deck chairs. The federal government needs to provide the resources to make sure when it's on federal land, they are ready, because when we're on state land, we are ready. It is a good, fire doesn't care what boundary it is, right? So we are going to continue to argue all the way up to DC. Here are things we know that work. You want to do something that is cost effective and efficient, and it actually does the trick, then look at what we're doing. Please help us do it. Please fund it. And that's my message to the folks at the federal level.
All right, thank you. With that, we're going to wrap the wildfire briefing for 2025.
Thanks, everybody. Stay safe out there.
Really encourage folks to stick around for our tour. We have past managers, David Allen, right back there.
Oh my God, take the tour, people. You're going to be so impressed. Take the tour.